Hello and welcome to another episode of The House That Happens with me, Andrew Milani, and my good friend here, Cruz.
How you doing?
Yeah, how you doing, Cruz? He has a full name, but he just goes by Cruz sometimes. And this is a special episode of The House That Happens we have here for you today, this morning, this afternoon, whenever you may be listening to this. We're going to start off, I guess we could say a little bit philosophical here. We're going to get into trade deadlines, trading prospects, rentals, all that, and kind of like how that all kind of fits into the sports world, the meaning of all these things, and try and put those pieces together and make sense of it in only one way that The House That Happens could. Cruz, how you doing today?
I couldn't be better. Once again, we want to yell out, it is on Simcoe Day, and you know what I think of Lord Simcoe.
Yes.
We already brought that in the other shows. If you listen this way, just once again, I already did the soliloquy. He is the master of ending slavery.
Yes, you will hear this a little bit down the line.
Yes.
This is originally recorded on August 7th,
which is
2023, Simcoe Day. Yes,
or a civic holiday, whatever it's called.
Civic holiday now officially, but...
I think what you're really going to get today is that we're going to really, it's something that has come up. We're going to give you a historical perspective, too, on this, because I'm going to tell you, when I was young, I didn't really... You knew there was a trade deadline. Mm-hmm. You knew that people wanted to improve their rosters and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just amazed that it's progressed to a thing like where they have an all-day show on TSN.
Yes.
On Baseball Day, ESPN now dedicates the day to their trade deadline and stuff like that.
This is something that Canadian television kind of pioneered with the
yes.
NHL trade deadline, like you alluded to just now.
Which is great, but what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to get to the value of this. And when I first figured out the value of trade deadline, it had nothing to do with improving a team. It was actually a good scam by Sam Pollock and the Montreal Canadiens. It really was. People don't know about it, and we're talking about 50 years ago now, but...
Well, it was about improving his team just long-term.
Long-term, but okay, so if anybody ever knows about this, and this is how slick Sam Pollock was, first of all, people don't realize that back in the day, Montreal got the top two French players. They were automatic property to them, and I think Toronto got to do the two best players at St. Pat's, Toronto St. Pat's or something. I don't know how it worked. Anyway,
well, they own the Marlies.
Yeah, whatever the case may be.
That was their prospect stream.
Anyways, the most unique trade deadline is this: how Sam Pollock was. Is it has to do with the great Guy Lafleur, the late great Guy Lafleur. Is that somehow he figured out that the California Golden Seals were going to be the worst team in hockey. Yeah, they turned out to be one of the worst teams in organized sports, in history speaking, with some of the worst looking uniforms.
That part's true, but I don't know about worst teams of all time. We've seen some pretty bad NHL teams, and the Seals don't usually get mentioned.
Okay, it's just one of those things where it doesn't work, like where you want to have the same motif for all your leagues. Like, everyone knows those classic Oakland A's jerseys and stuff look great. It just didn't work on the ice. It didn't.
Might have had something to do with those white skates.
Oh, whatever the case may be, it just didn't go. Just like it's the question now. Did the before we get too off topic, but it should be brought up. Did the L.A. Laker colors work well for the Los Angeles Kings?
I would say yes.
Well, how come they got rid of them?
Oh, because the black and silver was way more tempting.
Well, that's only because we know what happened with Gretzky, and Gretzky didn't like purple, I heard. But anyways, but you know, when you do see those royal purple jerseys, like they had a team, I think I told you about a year ago when I was down right by my arena, right down here in Martin Grove. They were a travel team, and I'm walking my dog, and they're all in those royal purple uniforms, and I go, God damn, that reminds me of Rogie Vachon. And some guy ran over and got my attention and said, hold on, you know who the coach is? It was Rogie Vachon's son.
Get out.
I'm telling you, I never told you that story?
No.
Blew me away. So
That's
I'm coming.
Cool.
Oh, yeah. I'm walking down the street with my dog, and I'm looking over, and they're skating around, and they're in those original.
Yeah.
Not the home royal purple Kings logo shirts, and with the lettering on the back. I knew it had to be a travel team.
Yeah.
But it looked amazing. They're flying around the Martin Grove rink, which I walk by every day because the rinks were so busy on the tournament, and they're an upper echelon team. Mm-hmm. There was a bus parked, like their travel bus was there, like driving them around, which I was impressed with. I guess it read it here, and I just said, man, reminds me of Rogie Vachon. The guy goes, what'd you just say? I said, Rogie Vachon. They said, wait, come here. And guess what? He came over, he had a Rogie Vachon mustache.
Oh my God!
But it was
so
the
cool.
son.
That's cool.
Wasn't it cool? I came right up here and told, sir, so let's go down and talk to him again. But whatever, that's there. But anyways, my point being is, what had happened was this: Sam Pollock was so freaking smart. First of all, he traded away two credible players. One was Carlos Vadnais, who was a solid NHL defenseman at the time, and they needed some help with the goaltending because they had a guy named Gary Smith who thought it was going to be okay, and he got stolen by Chicago later and did have a decent career. But what Sam Pollock is famous for doing is, when it looked like the Golden Seals were going to win a couple games, one of the guys he traded was Ralph Backstrom, who was arguably today would be a second or third line center scoring 20 goals, and a prospect who was a bum I heard had drinking problems, so they already knew. He never even made it to the NHL. And they scored Guy Lafleur the year they won the Stanley Cup. So they won the Stanley Cup in 1971. The first draft pick in the entry draft that year, Montreal stole from California and drafted Guy Lafleur.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and this is before, obviously, you alluded to this a little bit, before we knew the value of draft picks, especially those top 3, top 5, top 10 picks.
Yeah, it didn't even come up then. But I knew there was a couple guys, including Harry Sinden, and I think it was another general manager, I think was in Minnesota, and Scotty Bowman was not with the Montreal Canadiens at the time.
He was still with St. Louis.
Yeah, and they all raised their head up and went, but there was nothing was done illegally. There was no backdoor deal. And if you said you're going to sign on the line, you signed on the line. You made the trade, and here we are.
Just some shrewd business.
Very shrewd business, but it did happen around the trade deadline, which says to me is, first of all, what is the significance of the exact trade deadline?
Well, I would say it's kind of the deadline for teams, to shit or get off the pot. Number one, you're either
I agree.
You're a contender or you're not. Kind of, getting your assets together for a playoff run or starting to build for next season or 3 years down the line, however it may be, whatever your timeline is.
Okay.
Now baseball had a weird thing where there was 2 trade deadlines for the longest time.
Oh, now we're going down the road I want to go down. Got you.
I could never figure the second trade deadline, the waiver trade deadline, rather. It would be the non-waiver trade deadline was July 31st, and the waiver trade deadline was August 31st. And if you don't know how that worked, was you had to put a player on waivers, and then if you got claimed by another team, you had to negotiate like a trade for him to be released. Why they came up with that system, I don't know. That never made much sense to me. To me, it always just seemed like, I don't know how it worked if like multiple players or multiple teams put in a claim for one guy. That was never really put out there what the exact, minutia of the business dealings worked for that.
It was weird.
It's very weird.
Can I say one name?
Go for it.
George Steinbrenner.
He's the reason for this?
He was one of the ones that they eliminated it because of the manipulation.
They eliminated the waiver trade deadline.
I think, yeah.
But then they brought it back?
No, they've never brought it back. And then what they did is they don't have, now the trade's done. You're done.
I understand that. Yeah.
And that's the way. That's my point of being there. What it did, it was for teams because what you do is you had to pick up money in contracts. Mm-hmm. Okay, there was follow the money.
Sure.
Okay, Steinbrenner had more money than money, so he liked the fact that there was a chance that he would talk up to somebody. We'll give you this prospect, put him on the waiver thing. He would claim him and add more money to it, so he could. So. We'll study this more, and if anybody that's listening to this show want to call in and add or give us some facts we don't know, but I know one of the reasons it was eliminated was because of George Steinbrenner.
But it took a long time after Steinbrenner to get rid of it.
When did they got rid of it? What?
A couple years ago.
Oh, I thought
within
it was
the last
longer.
5 years.
Yeah,
10 years, something like. No, because last 5 for sure. Because even when was it 2016? I believe the Jays got Liriano
right.
in August.
Yeah, right. Okay, but anyways, I really bring it up because one of the guys that was never a big fan of that was Pat Gillick. Because remember they used to call him Stan Pat?
Stan Pat, I've heard that
before,
before,
they used to call him Stan Pat Gillick because I believe that he said if this is a trade deadline, it's done. Because what I question about is when do you have the trade deadline? Mm-hmm. Okay, so now it's August 4th. And we'll talk about all leagues for a second, but start with baseball. It's August 4th. So I believe if August 4th is your trade deadline, we're done.
Yeah.
You can't add it on. Now,
I think it should be a little bit later in the season, but that's neither.
Tell me why.
I think the perfect spot for a trade deadline is 3/4 of the way through a season. We're a little bit before that, 2/3. I think they can move it down just a little. Like a couple
August
more weeks.
15th.
Exactly.
Okay, because I'm with you there because then what you do is you get halfway between because some of the bitching is now is because of the waiver line and the trade deadline. So some of the executives, even though Theo is out of it now, there's a little bit of manipulation of like, okay, maybe it was too soon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe we should have had an option. So you're going to go there because you don't know what's in your farm system or whatever the case may be.
In baseball especially, I feel like there's so many teams there in the mushy middle that don't really know if they want to buy or sell. It just gives them those 2 weeks to, you go on that big run or you take that, you look at that big losing streak. It gives you a little bit more time to figure things out. You get more trades done at the end of the day.
Okay, so I'm of the belief that because we're gonna stipulate where we are when we're discussing this trade deadline. First of all, I'm going to agree with you. I think the trade line should be August 15th. Yeah. I'll accept that, which means we'd have a week to go. But what that means is there's no more waivers. There's no more.
Well, the waiver trade deadline's done anyways,
so that's what I'm saying. So now we're stiff. We're stiff on what goes on. I think you can make minor league trades, though, right?
Well, that's the thing I want to get to as well. So at least from the NHL's perspective, the trade deadline, it's not really a trade deadline. You can still make trades after. But the thing is, you cannot. If you trade for a player or sign a player after that date, he cannot play on your playoff roster.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
Then. Okay, because that's what I'm trying to get at.
Which the NBA kind of manipulates.
We're going to get there.
Yes.
We're going to get to that in a second. So my thinking on baseball is, okay, we move it to August 15th. But in another good thing that they did, which I never understood, is that August 15th, and now you're only allowed to call up, 4 players? Remember at that September 1st thing?
Yeah.
That was the work. See, this is what I don't understand. You had a trade deadline. Then you had a waiver deadline, and then you could call up like the Army. You had to bring extra chairs into the goddamn dugout to fill out all the players in, which does what? I really think that what a lot of baseball people should have screamed about analytics, so to speak, is that sometimes the guys that had those home runs in the frickin' September and stuff were playing against lesser players who were trying to get a chance to make the team next year.
Yeah.
So you're hitting home runs off some minor league guys.
Yeah,
so why don't we ever bring that up in our game of analytics, Mister? And I never hear analytics people bring it up. So if I'm bringing the analytics people is, we were talking about stats and how things are changed and stuff. I want to know the difference now because you're now only allowed to have 4 call-ups, right? Is it 4?
Something like that.
Okay, which is okay because I'm saying you're going to rest some players going into the playoffs so you have a higher quality of competition. I'll accept that. But not 10 guys, remember?
Oh, yeah,
it was
stupid.
insane. And then so what you could do is, which is one of the reasons I think they changed like the 3-batter thing is, you could have a pitcher for every batter. A pitcher for every inning, which is they're trying to do now, which is no biggie. But then you want to know why the game...
Oh, it's only 2 call-ups now.
Great. Even better.
Yeah, because the 28-man roster in September.
It used to be 35-man roster. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then, so that means you could alter your roster to win games by putting so many pitchers up against the guy. So what you've done is effectively change the competitive level going into the playoffs, and then you go back to the other way. Hence the reason I'm bringing up this thing that I told you about, another thing which you're going to have to discuss and make a decision on. Are they going to go, if you're going to play this, if these are the rules for the regular season, I agree with hockey doing the shootout if they have to get it that way, and baseball putting the guy on second base. Yeah. So you're not going to use those in the playoffs because that affects too much the competitive balance. I agree.
You're just going to piss off everybody too. New school and old school, I think.
Okay, so we're getting a little bit there. I'm losing my train of thought in this way. What really pisses me off is when you go to the playoffs now is like if these are the rules you played with all season, what are you going to change? Are you going to change? One of them is pitch clock time. Remember I brought it up? Yeah. That's being. Have you heard? You're hearing it now. There's been big rumblings about it. So now we're trying to balance it the competitive level at the trade deadline by saying this is a trade deadline and that's it. But now you're going to pitchers get away with something that they did all season that they're not going to get away with. So is that going to make Manoah a better pitcher because he doesn't have a pitch count in the playoffs? Just a food for thought. We don't have to go down that road.
No,
but you know what I'm saying? But
yes.
These are all aspects of the game that I think should be solidified before you go into the playoffs so you'll know that we're not playing a completely different game. So I understand in the playoffs, I understand, like I said, we understand the second base, we understand the shootout. That's regular season time, logistics. No, can't have that during the playoffs.
No.
So how it's going to go. So that's just one of the things you're going to think about when you're bringing guys in for the trade deadline, which I think should be defined. One of the things that we should define, because what we have now is, if you don't define it or you alter the rules, let's bring up the Los Angeles Lakers.
Just baseball at large.
Okay, but I'm saying that, but the Lakers, look what they did. So you can't do that now. There's no more alterations. Same, like the reasons Houston grabbed Verlander at this trade deadline is because he was part of the team last year. I get the dynamics.
Sure.
Look at the Lakers team January 1st. And look at the Lakers team, April 1st.
Yeah.
That's not a trade deadline. That's total manipulation.
How so?
Okay, you buy out a player. Okay, he's free to go wherever he wants. So you make your agent, agent, makes a deal to buy you out now. And what happens is, I don't know what the backdoor dealing is. Like, say you're OKC and you got a Russell Wilson, and how do you get rid of him? Okay, the Lakers will backdoor the contract, and he's a free agent now, and you bring him right to LA. And you can do this up until the playoffs start.
That's the absurd part. Where
That's what I'm saying.
Where if you're a free agent, you could just like piggyback on like any
get
team.
off the couch.
I don't like that. I think you should sign to make your decision by trade deadline.
Okay, and that's what I'm saying. So if you want to have a 10-day waiver exposure in the NBA, I'll give you that.
Fine.
But I mean, it's the day before the playoffs.
Get out of here. That's nonsense.
That's what
nonsense.
I'm saying. So then you're not.
That's manipulation.
That's when you're asking. We were talking about what I meant by manipulation. That's what I'm saying. I think that should be eliminated. So the NBA should say the trade deadline is the trade deadline. Now, when you go to the NFL, and we're going to get back to the NBA in a minute because what the hell they really more manipulation. When you get back to the NFL, I think it's even better because the NFL says, okay, this is a trade deadline. It's over. And half the time you don't even know there's a trade deadline.
Exactly. I mean, you're lucky for like one big trade midseason in the NFL?
Because they're already manipulating before because you got to make your lineup. Now, here's the biggest thing about the NFL that there's a difference, which people don't always understand. There's about anywhere, they say at a given time, from 100 to 200 players working out incessantly right now. Some of those guys will be NFL guys because the NFL guys' contracts will expire by December 1st. Which makes you an off-the-couch guy.
Yeah.
So that's another weird thing about the NFL is I know they have defined their deadline. You can't do any more, but you can get guys coming off the couch.
Yep.
And do you think that's a little weird? Where do you draw the line in the NFL then?
What do you mean?
The trade deadline is a trade dedeadline, but okay, so-and-so.
Well, like teams have like their practice squads too, right?
A practice squad's only 6 players, and I agree with the practice squad because the injury level and the type of sport it is and the things that you got to look forward down the thing, which your taxi squad is basically your insurance policy. Same shit.
Yeah.
Kind of deal. But what I'm getting at is that the NFL can suddenly, like if they wanted to, okay, it's the playoffs now, right? Heard Brady's working out. Philadelphia's going in and Jalen Hurts, no, I shouldn't bring up any name. Just say some name team has a quarterback and all of a sudden they get hurt. You can bring Brady in. You could bring Brady in to start the playoffs because Tom Brady is playing for nobody and he's on a couch. I'm thinking, how do you stop that? Shouldn't there be like a deadline now? Okay, from now on, you can't get a player. Like say the playoffs start, like it's a 17-game season. So let's say from now on, you can't add any players to your team after January 18th.
Okay.
Think that's fair?
Yeah.
But what if you have a bunch of injuries then? They're going to say,
then there's I'm sure there's emergency protocol.
Then let's just go by that.
Yeah.
Emergency protocol and nothing else so that you can't bring guys in. Because I think that freaking hurts the competitive
even like
balance.
What you say, January, whatever. Like that seems late. Like it should be
you
should have your guys locked in December. Early January.
Okay, January 1st. And you know what I mean? They're still playing games. Like, when did the season end? Like, if I were to check the end of the season
like first week of January it ends now?
Yeah, something like that. It'll be the first week.
So, like the 8th or the 10th, yeah.
So, I'm saying that what they got to decide to do, and I think that's where the NHL does it best. Mm-hmm. Once your trade deadline comes, it's over, right? You can't do anything. If your guys are in the minors, you can bring those guys up and get your minor league trades.
But even then, it's kind of like September call-ups where like it's a limited number of call-ups you can make past the deadline.
Then that should, I agree with that because I'm saying is I believe this. If it's supposed to be about team and this team is going to get you there, then that should be the team at the end of training camp. You play a season.
Yep.
I believe you should have manipulations, and I'm still saying that's why your beloved Toronto Maple Leafs didn't go where they did because they made too many wholesale changes at the deadline. 18-player team, change 6-player.
We've been through this before. They don't go past Tampa without those picks or without those players. Excuse me.
We're not going to talk about it because it's not the season. But I'd bash you right now about the next round. So let's just not go there. What I'm just trying to say is that here at the House That Happens, we believe that we should define the deadline. If this is the deadline, none of this, no more manipulations, no more waivers, no more okay. And if you get guy off the couch, it's got to be by a certain date so the LA Lakers cannot have a wholesale team. Like, you look at the LA Lakers team, like, let's go back to the first night of the season.
Yep.
And let's go to the LA team that started the playoffs.
Oh, night and day.
Oh, that's like, I think they only have a 12-man team and a 15 roster sign.
Yep.
Well, they have 9 guys difference by the time the playoffs started. That's like starting a whole new season. So I think that's bullshit. So here at the House That Happens, we want to say, can we...
I mean, though the Lakers, their biggest acquisition, I would say, happened at the deadline anyways.
So you're saying is ESPN and the league on this because we want LeBron and the Lakers on because they're a good draw for TV? Is that where we're going? Because then again, you're just screwing up the competitive balance because you want these names? Because that's never going to work because we know in Europe when they tried the Super League with soccer, what happened?
Oh, they got shut down.
Very good because guess what? We want real competition. We
Yeah.
only want certain levels, even though we know in college football things could be changing on that level on a whole new game.
Yeah, that Super League, they were trying to turn soccer into F1, which...
Doesn't work.
Doesn't work,
No. Because I want the guy from Bristol, England, for his team to have a chance. I want OKC to have a chance. I want Minnesota Timberwolves to have a chance.
That's
you know
it.
what I'm saying?
That's
So
it.
we're going to go. So let's alter it. So we've decided in the House That Happens that we want a definitive trade deadline.
Hurrah.
Really, no more. Whatever happens. You know, and I always said an interesting thing. I don't know what you're going to call the shows because we had that results thing.
Yeah.
I've had another one that says the trade deadline dilemmas and disasters. it's
not bad.
To put it on. But when I really started noticing the trade deadline the next time for me, and we're talking about hockey, was because I'm still saying, so now we're getting to 1980. You're not alive yet.
I'm minus 13 years old.
Yeah, you're minus 13
Negative
years
13.
old. So now it's the trade deadline, and the first one that ever got my attention is the famous Butch Goring signing for the New York Islanders.
Yeah.
That's what got my attention because at the end, unfortunately, and we keep tabs on the Habs forever, is that was the year that the Islanders, in 1979, the Islanders were the best team in hockey. That was the first year that they passed Montreal for a regular season, okay? However, they run into this juggernaut called the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Oh, no, that was 79. That was
78?
Yeah, that was 78.
Okay, anyway, we should look up really quick. Who eliminated the New York Islanders in 1979 in the playoffs?
Rangers, semifinals.
Was it semifinals?
Yeah. I think they may have gotten swept. I'd have to double check that quickly.
Because then Montreal beat the Rangers in the finals in 1979?
Yeah.
In any event, what happened was everyone noticed this, is that, and it's smart people, that Al Arbor and Bill Torrey.
Oh, Al Arbor, arguably one of the greatest coaches of all time.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Islanders, as the number 1 seed, they lost to the number 4 seed Rangers in the semifinals in 6 games.
In 6 games, okay? So the Rangers went to the finals against Montreal that year?
And then they lost in 5 to Montreal.
Oh, yeah, Montreal bitch slapped them hard. But anyways, you know what? I was hoping that we'd get a chance to play the Islanders in the finals to define that, because the very next year, in 1979, we got upset by Minnesota in the first round, or
80,
Buffalo.
you mean.
Or 80, yeah.
80. I think it was Minnesota.
Yeah, we got with my good friend, the late, great Tom McCarthy. Anyways, the reason I'm bringing up the Islanders and Montreal at the time is because when it came to 1980, and the playoffs came, and they looked over at Montreal, and they looked over at the Islanders, is that the Montreal was deeper down center. Okay? So out of nowhere, a very solid hockey player, Butch Goring, who just signed for 5 years in L.A. So it wasn't that he was bitching about it, and he was number 2 in L.A. by the time, because they still had the great Marcel Dion was your number 1 ever, and the crown line with Charlie Simmer and Dave Taylor, which was, what was it called? I forget, some fancy name for it. It had to do with card playing and Kings and all that. So actually, Butch Goring was a number 2 center on the L.A. Kings at the time. Bill Torrey took a look over, and L.A. wasn't going to do anything that year anyway. They were another year. They were a middle-of-the-pack team. And what did they do? They were offered draft picks. No, what they did was this, is L.A. was trying to get better. They were offered 2 solid players, Billy Harris and Dave Lewis were the principal guys. Now, if you go back and look on that, Dave Lewis was a solid defenseman. If he was in the NHL now, he'd be at number 4.
Okay.
He wouldn't be a number 5, or definitely be a third pairing, but there's a good possibility he might be the second guy on your line. And they also got Billy Harris, who was a great two-way player, score you 20 goals, killed penalties, on the ice sometimes at the end of the game, on the checking roll. And for Butch Goring, at the time, which looked like a pretty even trade. Unbeknownst to anybody is, when you bring a player to your team, it's his fit. Butch Goring was a perfect fit for the New York Islanders at that time because it took the pressure off Brian Trottier and the number one line of Clark Gillies and Mike Barsley, and Clark Gillies should never be in the Hall of Fame. The only reason is he played on that line.
So who did the Islanders play in the first round of the playoffs that year, guess?
The Toronto Maple Leafs.
Nope.
Who?
The L.A. Kings.
Oh, yeah, the L.A. Kings, that's right. And what did they do to them?
They beat them in 3-1.
Yeah,
in the preliminary round.
Yeah, they beat them no problem like that.
No, Toronto got swept by Minnesota that year.
And then Minnesota played Montreal, right?
Yes, and Minnesota beat you guys in 7.
In 7, yeah. Oh, I was flipping. I was not a happy. We were the first team to lose to an expansion team. That was the first time an expansion team
beat Montreal.
No, that expansion team. No, the Islanders won before that. Beat original 6 team. I think that's what it was. The first original 6 team to lose a playoff series to playoff
expansion squad. Wow.
There was something weird. Minnesota did something first that nobody else did. Montreal, and we lost in the first round. That was a preliminary round.
Well, no, that couldn't have been the case because didn't Philly beat Boston?
Oh,
in one of the
that's
Cup
true
finals?
too. Then what was the Minnesota connection? Minnesota did something first. Maybe it was Montreal's first time losing to an expansion team in the playoffs.
That makes sense.
Maybe something. I know they had a first thing. Anyways, what point out to be is that Butch Goring ended up being a vital part. It was a perfect fit for the team because he had a couple other young guys, Bobby Nystrom, and a couple of those other players that played pretty good. But let's take it one step further. He was instrumental in being beginning of the dynasty for the New York Islanders, who went on to win 4 Stanley Cups in a row, and he was an intricate part. One year he was a Conn Smythe Trophy winner.
He was
a Conn Smythe Trophy winner. And do you know what his job is today?
What's that?
He is still a broadcaster on the New York Islanders radio telecasts, I believe. Isn't that amazing? So a guy who signed a 5-year contract for a team, gets traded at a deadline, becomes part of the dynasty, and is still part of the organization. That's weird trade deadline stuff, don't you believe?
Well, I mean, hey, he got welcomed into the family.
In a good way, but I don't think very many trades end up to being that great. Okay, so now we're paying attention to the trade deadline in the 80s, which is getting bigger, right? Which gets to me, my second historical baseball notice. Do you know who Doyle Alexander is?
I do.
Okay. He played
for the Blue Jays.
Yes, he did. That's where he got his money. He was like 17-2 or something for the Jays. He had 2 years in a row where he won 17 games. He pitched in the playoffs for him in the ill-fated
85
in the ill-fated series there. Their guy was Steve, but they had Doyle Alexander. Doyle Alexander threw more junk than Fred Sanford. Do you know who Fred Sanford is?
No.
Sanford and Son.
Oh, Sanford and Son, okay.
And when he owned a junkyard.
Yeah.
Okay. He had more junk than Fred Sanford. I'm going to tell you this. In any event, he had 2 good years for the Blue Jays, and it was another one of those situations where I give Pat Gillick credit that all of a sudden Doyle wanted the big money. Okay? Gillick said, not a junk guy. He can't throw 80 miles an hour. However, Detroit was on the verge then because they had Dan Petrie, Jeff Petrie's son, and they had just won the World Series in '84. Detroit wanted another bite at the apple, and they needed that third starter after Jack Morris and Dan Petrie. So what did they do? They gave the big money to
Doyle.
Atlanta.
Oh.
Atlanta gave them the big money. However, at the trade deadline, Detroit Tigers decided they needed that third starter, which was really weird because Doyle, if you check his numbers, was kind of struggling with Atlanta that season, but he had a Verlander last 6 or 7 starts like this year. Okay, so Detroit decided they needed that starter. Do you know who they traded? Doyle Alexander. Do you know who they traded? You don't know, do you?
No, I don't.
They traded John Smoltz.
Oh, no.
They traded
John Smoltz. Oh, my God.
That's when I kind of went, we heard about John Smoltz because he was a prospect, but he was having trouble with his control. And Detroit did bring him up, and I think he was 2-2 with a 6 ERA. Okay, but he was young. He was young. So the question is, we're going to go on to this, is the question of prospect deals for veterans and where does that go? But that has to rate as, and you know what? Detroit did We did. Who did we play that year? We ended up losing, I think, to Minnesota, didn't we? Or was that no? No, it would have been 84. What year did we pick up Doyle Alexander? Because I think by that time Jack Morris was playing for Minnesota and they won. Or was that 89? In any event, Minnesota went to the World Series. Detroit ran out of gas because we chased down the Toronto Blue Jays, who had a 5-game lead with 10 games left.
Oh, okay. So this is 87.
At 87, yep. And then we ended up losing to Minnesota, didn't we?
Yeah.
In the playoffs. We ran out of gas, basically.
Twins won the World Series in 87, yeah.
Yeah, but we chased it down like a champ. Then when they won 2 years later, that's when Jack Morris ended up going to Minnesota, because when Minnesota won 2 series in there. But we had a trade there. Is that one of the worst trade deadline ever?
It very well
we're going to get to that in the process of this show, but that's what my reason for this history is, because now that's 1987. By this time, the trade deadline's becoming something. Before that, there was no TV shows. There was no I love Jeff O'Neill always saying, man, I bring an extra lunch on that trade deadline day because TSN is on all day. ESPN interrupts their programming for the trade deadline, which brings us to the belief, what do we say? Are the prospects that you give up at the trade deadline worth the players that you brought in? I say it depends on the result.
I think so, too. And that kind of takes me to my first one that I want to bring up.
Okay.
1992.
Oh,
Toronto Blue Jays make a trade with the New York Mets. We trade Jeff Kent for David Cone.
I know. What's that?
For David Cone.
Do you think it was worth it?
We won a World Series.
Okay, so this is the great enigma as you bring up Jeff Kent.
And Jeff Kent ended up being like a pretty good ball player.
He won an MVP.
5-time All-Star.
5-time rounds there. Okay, the question is, and then this is just a rhetorical question. The question is, does Jeff Kent belong in the Hall of Fame? I say no. Some people say yes. Okay, but that's an interesting trade, because how long did Kent? You know what? David Cone was a rental.
Yeah, he was a rental.
He got out of Toronto as fast as he came here.
Went to Kansas City.
Yeah, for a free agent, right? A free agent money, and then he got traded back to New York.
He went to go play with the Yankees.
Yeah, because the Yankees did that waiver bullshit with George Steinbrenner that we were talking about previously, and that's how they got the back door with Cone and all that stuff. That's why they had to stop it. But the problem with Cone was this: he went to Kansas City and was terrible. I'm not terrible.
He won a Cy Young.
He won a
94 Cy Young winner.
I didn't know that. So when did they trade him, in 95?
Well, let me see. His 93 with Kansas City is very good as well.
I thought he kind of tanked it.
Let's see. He went back to Toronto for 95. I didn't know that, actually.
At the trade deadline. When did we win the World Series?
I think it was the other way. I think he started with Toronto and we traded him to the Yankees at the deadline, it looks like. Or what? These numbers don't make sense.
No, I don't know what you're looking at. But I just know that David Cone was not happy in Toronto. He never was comfortable here. Now
no. These numbers do make sense. He played, it looked like he started the season for Toronto, and then he went to the Yankees in 95. So he did end up signing back here, but like 95, the Jays were trash.
Yeah,
so
that was after the strike, right?
Yeah.
Everything was falling apart. We had the new ownership. The Brewer guys were going, what's the Blue Jays?
The Germans or whatever?
The Belgians.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they looked at it. One of the assets on the sheet was Toronto Blue Jays. One of the executives said, what's a Toronto Blue Jay? Is that not insane? When Labatt sold, like they sold to the brewing company, is what they did.
Yeah.
And one of their assets was
Blue Jays,
was the Blue Jays. When I heard that story, it freaked me out. Like, that tells you, now that's changed dramatically over time because of the internet and all the cable, and everybody knows everybody on an everyday basis. But think you're in Belgium and you don't even know you have a baseball team? That's absolutely blows my mind.
Well, it shows you where they thought the value of that asset was.
Yeah, but it is a huge asset now.
Well, they just completely my point is that they completely just like didn't know what they had.
Okay, so that's in the 90s. So that's only 25, 30 years ago. Now Tom Brady's buying freaking soccer teams in Europe. Would you ever think of a football player 30 years ago is going to be buying a soccer team in Europe?
Probably not.
You know, that's what I'm saying. The evolution of what's valued and what's your assets is right there. But
so I want to go ask you about another trade at the deadline. 1990, Montreal trades Zane Smith to Pittsburgh for a package including Scott Ruskin, Willie Green, and Moises Alou.
That was a good trade for the Expos. There's no doubt about it. Come on. And Moses had a great season. It wasn't for the broken ankle. He could have been a Hall of Fame career.
Okay.
Because he had some good years in there, and those are the years when the Larry Walker, Pedro Martinez kids, because Montreal had a great what would you call it, farm system. They were doing it well because they knew they couldn't compete on the free agent market. And a lot of people didn't go to Montreal. Do you know back then, because people used to think that you soon went to Montreal, you spoke French. You ever talk to some of the baseball players in those days? It was so ridiculous. You know, I'm not going to Montreal, I got to speak French.
No, then when the players got there, they're like, oh, I like this city.
Oh, every time. It's just the way that it goes. And that was a good trade, though, I thought, for them. Because what's his name? The guy that he was a starter, wasn't he?
Zane Smith, yeah.
He was a starter for Montreal, the guy they traded, right? And what did his career after that? His arm fell off. But for that year in Montreal, he was on his way to winning 15 games, if I'm not mistaken. You know what he was? He was like an Aaron Sanchez that we brought up. He was looking really good, and then he left town.
Yep.
Never to be the same. But here's the interesting thing, though. When you think about it, of all the things that have gone on, let's just talk about when you're talking about trade deadlines and trades going on and prospects or not. Do you know that there has been since 1980, 1,152 players have changed teams in the NHL at the trade deadline? Doesn't that sound insane?
No, I believe it, though, because you see at the end of every trade deadline on SportsCenter or whatever, they'll have, the infographic of, players trading, or, picks trading, and you're like, oh, my God.
Yeah, you go like that. But I didn't realize 1,152. So when you're talking about the trade deadline, the question is, are the prospects worth it? Okay, so one of the ones that has come up...
Again, a lot of that has to do with the result and the way how the prospect turned out. I can give you another Jays one, 1993. What? Jays trade Steve Carsey to Oakland for Ricky Henderson.
That's the good, the bad, the ugly, okay? You know why? I'm going to tell you. First of all, Ricky Henderson, he was a valuable piece at the time, but Steve Carsey won 15 games one year for Oakland, didn't he?
No. His highest career wins was 10 for Cleveland in 99.
Oh, I thought he won 14. Anyways.
No, he didn't. He played 11 years in the majors.
Never did nothing. He ended up going to bullpen.
40 starts, 357 games total.
But only 40 starts, right?
Yeah, only 40
and he was supposed to be, this is the I'm glad you brought it up because that's the first page in our, are the prospects worth it? Was it worth it? Now, obviously, when we traded Steve Carsey at the time, I was a little nervous because this kid looked like we knew we were only going to get Ricky Henderson for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's what I was worried about.
Pure rental.
Pure rental.
I think he went back to Oakland after.
Oh, right, or to New York, one of the two.
But I think it was Oakland.
Went back to Oakland because it was the end of his contract too, right?
Yeah.
So I knew that, but that's where you question it. Is it worth the prospect? You know what I mean? Because I thought Steve Carsey was going to be a solid starter. He was like in the Aaron Sanchez, Noah Syndergaard, we'll get to those guys in the second deal. So at that time, I would have said, oh my God, no. Because we're only going to get Ricky for 10 for 10 minutes. But here's the other thing that's with this is what the good thing about the Toronto Blue Jays and the Toronto fan base has learned in that time. And that's 30 years ago, okay? You weren't around to realize that when we had that strike season, this city kicked baseball to the curb so hard.
I know about it. People still talk about it.
It blew me away. It's the evolution of me becoming a Blue Jay fan. Because there was a lot of mitigating circumstances went on at that time, okay?
Yeah.
First of all, winning back-to-back World Series. Now, do you know how great is that?
Yeah, you don't see it.
Second to nothing. Yeah. Okay, so now here it is from my perspective. So now back in the day, how old was I then? So you're talking about, I'm a little older than you. I'm in my 30s then, okay? I'm in my mid-30s, baseball junkie at that time, who suddenly going out to bars and go, I hate the Blue Jays. Fuck the Blue Jays. F baseball. I'm never going to a game again. That's when they started questioning the dome. That dome's ugly for baseball anyway. We're playing in a pinball machine. Blah, 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 blah. It went on and on. Meanwhile, not only did they have the strike, we had the aforementioned Belgians.
Yes.
And a Roberto Alomar contract coming up in the prime of his career. Toronto blew all of it, all every element of that.
Well, they already started blowing out the team before Alomar.
Agreed, but that was because of the Belgians. But you see,
exactly.
Okay, it was the perfect storm of stupidity. Because what I'm trying to get at is that why the whole Toronto Blue Jay thing fell off the cliff, but it's come back mightily. Thank God, because I love baseball. But you got 3 factors here.
It took 2 decades to repair, though.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
Took time.
It took a long time to bring it all the way back. But, I mean, that's what conspired to happen there. Just think about this. You had a strike, you had a new ownership, and you had a Hall of Famer without a contract. And all 3 of them went to the demise of the Toronto Blue Jays, who went into, I don't know, the twilight zone of baseball for a number of years.
Yeah, they were kind of stuck in that, like, they were a perennial third-place team.
Oh, yeah.
Which back in the day got you nowhere.
Exactly. And how many prospects I'd like to look at that they traded that were good, bad, or ugly? We traded the outfielder to Philadelphia. Oh, what was his name? He was supposed to be a star. He didn't pan out.
Outfielder.
I forget his name. I'll think about him.
90s?
Yeah, 90s or early 2000s. He was an outfielder that we traded, and he was supposed to be a superstar. He never panned out. I forget his name. But anyways, when we're talking about prospects, we're talking about one of the things that really started saying about your prospects and trades surrounding the Wayne Gretzky trade to L.A.
Yes.
Do you remember who one of the pieces they got in that trade?
L.A.?
Yeah. No, Edmonton.
Edmonton.
Do you know one of the pieces they got, which was beyond a prospect? It was... he started off in Detroit, Jimmy Carson.
Oh, well, he wasn't really he had already put up like 100 points in L.A. at that time, hadn't he?
He had already been a 50-goal scorer.
Yeah.
So what happened was L.A., but I'm saying that I thought at the time, when you're getting Wayne Gretzky, you're never going to get your value.
No.
But they got Jimmy Carson, and a defenseman was good too. He ended up being better, I think it was. It wasn't Kevin Lowe, but it was a defenseman. Let's say, who were they traded? In any event, if you check the Gretzky trade, there was anyways. So
I know Martin Gelinas went to Edmonton as part of that trade.
Yeah, he was part of that trade too. Yeah, and they were all Detroit prospects to begin with, which was just the big call because actually Jimmy Carson was drafted by the Detroit Red Wings. Mm-hmm. He went to L.A. as a free agent.
Oh, interesting.
I think that's how it went there. I could be wrong. You could look that up. But my point being is that what do you want to get? You want to get the most value in a trade, and even though this wasn't really trade, it was during the off season. What did Jimmy Carson do after that? Within 5 years, he was out of the league. 50-goal scorer.
Yeah.
So you never know the value of your players.
Yeah, okay. So Carson and Gelinas were the only roster players to go to Edmonton that trade.
Yeah, exactly. But
it was 3 first-round picks and cash were the other pieces.
One of the first-round picks turned out to be pretty good for Edmonton. I like to know who did they mention
Ruchinski?
Nah.
The other guys.
That was Martin Ruchinski, right?
Yeah.
Nah.
Because the other guys were Jason Miller and Nick Juhar.
Oh, I thought they had gotten a guy like Kevin Lowe or.
The funny thing is, Edmonton got the 3 best, or sorry, LA got the 3 best pieces in the deal: Gretzky, Krushelinski, and McSorley.
Oh no, it was a steal of all time, especially with Krushelinski being the great second, third line 2-way player that he was. So, anyways, what I'm saying about is that not that Jimmy Carson was a prospect, but you would think that in a trade of that value, you got some, and Martin was looking like a good. He was like 21, 22 at the time too.
Gelinas?
Yeah,
and he ended up playing the league for 15 years?
Oh, a long, long time. So you'd think they'd get it there, but it doesn't always work out that way when the main guy gets there. And because I thought Jimmy Carson was going to be a Hall of Famer.
But I mean, I guess this kind of karma came and bit LA at the other end when they traded him to St. Louis. They basically got nothing back from the Blues. No, they got robbed too. So and it was on the way. It just made me think about what's the value in prospects or what's the value of a player. Sometimes they get overrated and sometimes they do. Well, I think in the case of baseball, going back to that, you can make the argument that 99% of prospects are overrated. Oh, now we're going to get there. Yeah. But then we have the ones that really blow my mind. I forgot about this. Do you know who Larry Anderson was? The name rings a bell. Okay. Larry Anderson was a Chris Bassett type pitcher. In what way? He'll win you 14 games. Okay. Give you 250 innings. He wasn't a head case that Bassett is. Okay. Do you know who they traded him for? A young Jeff Bagwell. I remember that trade too, but nobody knew who Bagwell was. Not that time. But at the Red Sox were doing is that if you go back to that, that's 1990, August 30th. Boston was in the heat of a pennant race. They won the division that year, didn't they? I'm pretty sure that they did. They came down the track like we want to win. They still had Roger Clemens all that time, and they were going to go for it. And they said, "Let's go." At the time, how old was Jeff Bagwell at the time? I can't even remember. But when they traded him, look what Bagwell turned out to be. So what is he, 1 in 10 prospects that turn out to be that good? Yep.
Because, what are you going to get for your prospects? That was horrible. The only one worse to me was John Smoltz.
So Bagwell would have been 22 at the time.
22 at the time, okay? So that's what you got for your prospects, okay?
So I want to read out some of his award voting that came the next few years. So 91 the next year, Rookie of the Year.
Rookie of the Year, yeah.
Next year, 19th place in MVP. Next year, 20th place MVP. The next year, MVP. Plus a Gold Glove, Silver Slugger, All-Star.
Oh, yeah, all of the above. Now, I forget who the executive one. It could have been Dan Duquette. That sounds him at the time. He is now admitted that was one. Was Dan Duquette or the other guy? I forget. There's a famous general manager has admitted, they got hit by a bus that day. Because Bagwell was there, but Bagwell at the time I heard was striking out a lot. That was a problem with him. He was a strikeout, was a hit and miss guy. He hadn't developed that hitting style that he had gotten. You know what I mean? But he ended up turning out to be a great player. And obviously Hall of Famer. Even though I thought he was borderline Hall of Fame at the time. I'm a tough guy. I'm old school Hall of Fame. I think he was a borderline Hall of Fame, but
he's like a 300 hitter over his career. Come on.
But the last 3 or 4 years, he was like Cabrera. Cabrera at the end, but Cabrera's going to the Hall of Fame too.
Even his last season, he still hit 250.
Did he?
Yeah.
Who did he play for still?
Houston his whole career.
He stayed there, yeah. That's probably one of the reasons he got in. Played with Biggio all the time.
Yep.
Gavin
they were
Biggio.
the second first baseman, yep.
But at the same time, when Boston gets fleeced like that, look a few years later, and I never understood this one. Seattle Mariners, 1997, were taking a run at the pennant, and they needed bullpen help. They got Heathcliff Slocum. Do you remember this guy?
No.
This guy was like Rodney. What was that, Rodney? What's the guy in the last couple of years?
Fernando Rodney.
He was a.
Did he wear his hat like his?
He was that kind of character. Okay. Do you know what frickin' Seattle gave up to get this guy? Derek Lowe and Jason Varitek.
Wow. What a package.
They were prospects.
Wow.
They were think about that, and they were part of that whole. Later, when they won the World Series,
Varitek was the captain. He was the glue.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So that's what sometimes you think about prospects. Okay, but at the same time, as we move along the list, as we go over the year and we look at things, there's other things like.
There's some crazy baseball ones I got here.
Oh yeah, me too. And one of them when you don't know what you're going to get because like I'm talking about at the time when you traded Jose Bautista. He got traded to Pittsburgh for Scott Kazmir and Jose Diaz. Now, Jose Diaz never became a regular player, but Scott Kazmir for a moment looked like he was going to be a Cy Young guy for a number of seasons, didn't they?
He ended up having a pretty decent career.
Not bad, but I mean, okay, so you trade, the Mets, they traded Jose Bautista.
Oh, yeah.
Which later went on, they traded him to Toronto Blue Jays. So who missed?
I thought we got him from Pittsburgh.
I'm Pittsburgh, but I'm saying he was original prospect for the New York Mets.
Yeah.
So he's a 2-time prospect. Well, no, he started to hit in Pittsburgh, but I don't think they had room for him on the bench. They had 4 outfielders or 5 outfielders at the time. They made a mistake on the wrong guy.
They were playing him at third base a lot.
And he was never a third baseman. No. They were trying to make him a third baseman. Remember, we tried to make him a third baseman for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't a third baseman. Great arm.
Sure.
Great
you could
arm.
play him at first.
No, but you needed his arm. That's why he turned out to be a good right fielder because nobody ran on Bautista.
No.
Once he came to Toronto, he came on here. But isn't it interesting that he's a 2-time trade deadline prospect? Because we got him at the midseason too, remember? Because we gave, whenever we traded for Pittsburgh, we gave them something because Barry Bonds was still playing for Pittsburgh then, and they were trying to make those runs.
With Bautista?
No, they were trying to look. We gave up pitching for Bautista, I believe. Yeah.
No, but Bonds would have been on the Giants. Or
by then? No. Was he by then?
Giants? He went...
He's played a number of years in Giants. He didn't get them almost to the 2000s.
No, 93 I would think he went to the Giants.
Oh, we should look it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Another horrible, horrible trade that I couldn't understand is a great prospect was Jay Bruner for the Yankees. He ended up playing third base for Seattle, forever?
Yep.
With the power, hit 40 home runs. Now, the thing about him that I often heard about is that would he have hit 40 home runs for the Yankees? I said in Yankee Stadium compared to the old dome that he had to play in, he should have hit 50 at freaking Yankee Stadium. You know what I mean? Like, can you hear those numbers? And he was a hardcore player, and people didn't... Yankees needed guys like that at the time. Who was Ken Phillips? A relief pitcher.
Yeah.
Another guy they needed in the bullpen. So sometimes I'm going, we're going to find a whole bunch of guys where this didn't work out for them, because you took those pitchings going on. But Jay, when I was researching this and I seen Jay Bruner got traded for this guy, that's where you failed on your prospects, okay? Now, if we keep going down, look at some of the prospects, because they always say, isn't that the famous one? Frank Costanza on Seinfeld. That's a famous, and I don't watch Seinfeld, but I've heard broadcasters.
Always game at Steinbrenner in his living room for trading.
Jay Bruner.
Jay Bruner,
that's what I'm saying. And I've never watched Seinfeld, but I've heard that's like it's not a meme, but it's one of those.
No, it is a meme.
Is it a meme?
Yeah.
Yeah. The broadcasters have done that. Costanza, I've never seen the episode, never seen it, was never a Seinfeld guy. But I've heard broadcasters refer to that.
I think you'd really enjoy the episodes where George works for the Yankees.
Oh, I know. I heard they're absolutely, that's what I mean. And being a baseball guy, I should check them out because it's absolutely hilarious when he comes home blowing a gasket because they trade Jay Bruner. But they did that after the fact, the episode, so they were able to manipulate the placing of that in the
plus
show.
Steinbrenner had to sign off on all that.
Oh, yeah, he did. Yeah. Which he did, which was hilarious.
Which is why for the early episodes of Seinfeld, I guess the later ones too, Jerry always had a Mets hat because he's a Mets fan.
Oh, yeah.
In the background. But the years where George was working for the Yankees, they had to be a Yankees hat.
Oh, yeah.
In the background.
Always do that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everyone knows Seinfeld was a freaking Mets fan since he's a kid. He went to Shea Stadium all the time. His dad brought him to Shea Stadium. You know what I mean? And you know what? That's an interesting thing when we talk about how you love things in baseball. It's interesting.
Although he's a Giants fan, which is a little uncommon. Usually it's Jets, Mets, right?
I find, and I don't know why, if I should bring this up because we don't want to, but I mean, I found it like including the Tony Kornheisers of the world and a few other ones. I found that Jewish New Yorkers like the Mets more than they like Yankees.
Really?
There's Sam. What's his name too? That did Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Larry David.
No,
he's a Yankees fan.
Is he a Yankee fan? Okay. Who is the other big guy in there? I find it interesting. A few of those guys, and they're anti-Yank, huge. Like I'm thinking New York. The Mets didn't come around until 1961.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So why wouldn't you be a Yankee fan? Wouldn't they be first in the city?
Well, they
they are still. But I mean, like all these, like I forget who.
But I mean, like the divide between like the number of Yankees versus Mets fans, it's like closer to 50-50 than you might think it is.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so. It is too because
they got to capitalize on those Yankees haters, you know.
Oh, no kidding! And you know what? Jay-Z's a big Yankee fan.
Yep, he is.
You get some of those guys there. Then you get the other guys like Nas. I think he became a Mets fan. Because when he became the big rapper he was, and I think is that because he was against Jay-Z? Jay-Z had the hat on and Nas would wear the Mets hat. You never know about that kind of ridiculousness anyway. But anyway, let's get back onto the prospects.
So you brought up Scott Kazmir before. I want to bring him up as like a positive. So the Tampa Bay traded Victor Zambrano to the Mets at the 2004 trade deadline. They ended up getting Scott Kazmir, which I ended up thinking was a good deal because Zambrano went right downhill after that. He looked like
he
did not last longer.
I think he was done by the end of the year. The next season, so
this was 04. His last season was 07.
Oh, he got to 07, yeah. But his numbers were never great.
07, his ERA was over 10. So
he was a souvenir giver. At the time. You know what it is, though? I'm funny you brought that up because I know that comes up later, but that's another one of those situations where Scott Kazmir was 2 times. Oh, yeah, no, he was just in that trade. Yeah. Then Batista went on from the other one, yeah.
And then 07, Texas trades Mark Teixeira to Atlanta for Elvis Andrus.
Interesting trade. Yeah. Who got the better of that, do you think?
I would say Texas, because how much did Teixeira last in Atlanta for?
10 minutes.
And what they do there with him, nothing.
No, and he was more of a Yankee in the end, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think right after that he went to the Yankees.
And he had good numbers, which is kind of weird because that means that they got burned. Like, did he want to be there? He said he got traded there. Was he pissed off? Like, you know what I mean?
Sounds like you just want to be anywhere but Texas.
That's what I mean, and it just seems so weird because another one.
Well, Texas was a mess at that time.
Oh yeah.
A-Rod and all that. That sent that franchise back 10 years.
And not only that, George Bush just left the ownership, and they're getting new ownership in, and Nolan Ryan came in. You're right, it was in there. But another one that and we're talking about people that are making ridiculous trades is, I still never remember in 2010, and I didn't know who he was at the time, but just think about this. San Diego trades Corey Kluber in a 3-way trade. One of the main guys was Ryan Ludwig. That guy was nothing. You know, he wasn't bad. He was kind of like Grishek, the guy we had in Toronto a couple years ago.
Grichuk.
Well, that kind of,
I was like, okay.
Okay, you know what I'm saying? But the deal was, you traded Corey Kluber? You blew it on that prospecting, weren't you? Looking like, come on, this guy was two-time Cy Young Award winner. Ludwig would hit 228 in 160 games for the Padres. That's just a disaster of the freaking, like when I read that one, I said, so, you know, what were your prospect? Who's in your war room? Mm-hmm. Who makes those decisions? Who decides on this? I'll never, ever understand that. Like, I'm saying, like, there's the, if you get a ring, doesn't matter. The ring is the chip is the be all and the end all. So if you get the one chip, does that mean who gives a shit about the prospects? Who gives a shit about everything?
Depends on how good the prospect is.
Well, that's because
if you're trading a Hall of Famer,
you know, but like, I mean,
this is one I didn't write down, but St. Louis or Calgary trading away Brett Hall.
Oh,
yeah, but they got a Stanley Cup out of it.
That's true too. So that's what I'm saying. But Brett Hall could barely skate then. Remember how terrible of a skater he was?
Well, I wasn't around, but
okay, yeah, he was terrible. Like he is skating.
I've heard.
Oh, he went to power skating schools. He went to those figure skating people. Like he didn't skate like that. Okay, let's put it that way. He was no Golden Jet, but he had those wrists.
Yeah.
Which is different. He had better wrists than his dad, but he and I think that they at that particular time they beat Montreal too, didn't they? Mm-hmm. I believe, which pissed me off.
What about? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was to say another trade. Cleveland, 2008. They trade CC Sabathia to Milwaukee, and they get a package including
used bases,
Zach Johnson, Rob Bryson, Matt Laporta. And Michael Brantley.
Yeah. And Michael Brantley turned to be out okay, but those are 4 prospects. All those guys were under 25. No, 2 of them they wanted them there, but because they thought they would rebuild their team. But you traded CC Sabathia.
He was a rental, though. He was at the end of his contract.
That's true, too. But none of those, you know what?
But Michael Brantley ended up turning out pretty okay.
But you know why? The main reason was because Sabathia didn't stay. Mm-hmm. So that's the reason that they ended up getting the Michael Brantley was a better part of that deal only because Sabathia left town, which I thought they should have better management and re-signed him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Why didn't you just re-sign the guy?
Well, maybe they were concerned about some off-field issues, let's just say.
CC's redeemed himself, I think now. I think he really
but
has.
At the time.
Oh, there's a lot of rumblings around about the guy. You know what I mean?
2009, Philadelphia trades Carlos Carrasco to Cleveland for Cliff Lee.
I don't know. You know why? Because Cliff Lee, that was funny you brought up because I've got a Cliff Lee trade here that I wanted to bring up before.
The next year?
Yeah. No,
I have. No. What year?
Okay, I'm trying to figure out where do I have the Cliff Lee one. What year was that again?
2009. I have another trade here where he got traded in 2010.
Yeah.
Seattle to Texas.
Yeah, that's interesting. Right? But Cliff Lee, who do you think won? I think I'd rather have Carlos Carrasco now.
Exactly.
In the long term.
I mean, if Philly had won another World Series, different story. But they lost in the World Series that year to the Yankees, I believe.
Yeah, and not only that.
And then they just kept getting worse. It was like one World Series, lost the World Series, losing the CS, lost the DS next year, the playoffs. Yeah.
But Cliff Lee became the perennial hired gun.
Oh, for sure.
Because, in that year, when did we came up? Because he stayed around the league for longer. Remember we kicked his tires? In
Jays?
The Jays, even up to 2015. Because remember he had won. Remember that one season he had for whatever it was? He went crazy. We didn't go, but we sniffed around for him.
Sure.
You know what I mean at the time? Because him a hired gun. Because he at the end he was in the playoffs every year for somebody.
Yeah. Him and CeCe, they were quite dangerous for the Indians.
Yeah, and not only that,
if I can say that,
and not only that, but I thought that for sure that combination should have given Cleveland. Cleveland never got a World Series, and all those times they had around there, and they weren't a big market team, and they didn't always have the biggest payrolls. They always kicked it around. They had a couple of starters, and they couldn't get over the hump. That was just like, sorry about your luck. And what about all the times that?
Actually, 2014 was the last year Cliff Lee pitched in the majors.
So was that the year in 2013 too? When did we have a kick at the can as the Blue Jays? Because he was still a trade line. People thought they could pick him up as a rental
maybe
way down.
2014.
No, because he'd been gone for then. Maybe 2013. Were we ever in the hunt then? We were in the hunt one of those years. And
2014 maybe. I'd have to check the standings again.
I'd have to check them too. I'm looking around. But
I remember 2014 being a lot better than 2013 for the Jays.
That
83 wins. They were one game out of second, so maybe.
We kicked at him because we thought we could make a run to make the playoffs, and we didn't do it. Because I forget who we had to give up. But I'm saying this is, I think,
probably like Brett Laurie, who they ended up trading anyways.
Yes, it was one of those kind of deals, which is interesting you brought him up because there's a prospect that didn't do anything. But I always found this trail interesting, and we ended up with this guy. Did you ever see the trades for Josh Donaldson?
Yes.
That little sequence was a little bit crazy because he was a trade deadline guy, or around the trade deadline. Look, they trade him. The Cubs trade him. And that was in 2008 where Cubs are making a whole bunch of noise. So the thing is that Donaldson's a prospect that shouldn't have been traded because he kind of got lost in Oakland at the time with his power. Because remember, he was only hitting so many home runs, but he was playing in that freaking huge ballpark. How many times did he foul out on those huge foul plans? How many times did he hit balls to the freaking warning track that would have been out at the Dome? Like, just add it all up for Donaldson, and then suddenly we steal him? But we didn't get him at the trade time. We didn't get him at the trade time.
He was like winter meetings, I believe we got him.
But the fact that
But Oakland knew what they had. Because he was an MVP candidate in 2014.
Or one of them, because he had a good season. I ended up, he was 4th or 5th in the voting. But my thing is, the Chicago Cubs, what did they get for Donaldson? Nothing.
Yeah,
Matt Merton, Eric Patterson, Sean Gallagher, and Rich Harden, and Sean Godin. All these guys pitched for 10 minutes.
The Jays didn't get much for him either, if I
remember.
No,
but they did say it would take 5 years before the Cubs realized the mistakes they made because he was so young at the time. But let's just look at what did these guys do? The injury-prone Harden didn't do nothing. 5-1 down the stretch in 12 starts and never played again. And what's his name? Chad Godin. They ended up trading that guy. What good was he? You know what I mean? So you never know, like, to trade him that young in his career. So you can't really blame the Cubs.
No.
Maybe. But, I mean, he went on in Oakland, and I know when we got him, I thought we, in hindsight, we was on that. I thought we got the second score of Chapman. But Chapman's never going to be a Donaldson for us now. No. You know what I mean?
And, I mean, the Jays didn't even give up that much if you really look at it. They gave up Brett Laurie, who was like the big piece at the time, even though he never really turned out.
I'm glad we got rid of him because we traded for him from Oakland, didn't we? And he went back to Oakland.
No, we got him from Milwaukee.
Or Milwaukee, yeah. Then he went back there, yeah.
Sean Nolan, Kendall Graveman, and Franklin Barreto, who never really amounted to much.
No, was he a pitcher too, wasn't he?
Barreto, I believe so.
Yeah, and he was a bum here.
Yeah.
He had
Nolan and Graveman were pitchers too, right?
They all look good in Syracuse at the time, or Buffalo. Or
everyone looks good in
Syracuse, and here they go. But that's an interesting one because Josh Donaldson's still playing, but even though he's terrible,
his numbers are declining.
Oh, he should be done. Yeah, he should be done. I'm sorry to hear that about him, but
oh my God! Do you know what we got for him from Cleveland?
Nothing.
A player to be named later, who ended up being Julian Merriweather.
No way. Another junk guy. You know what I'm saying?
Merriweather was one of those times. Every time you saw those doors open up and he came out, you're like, ooh.
Okay, so now when
biting on your fist.
Okay, so now you're thinking about it, and I know they made this trade because it was all about the money, and they couldn't re-sign him. And the A's again. Here's that guy, Eric Ludwig, the guy that they picked up, St. Louis. Okay. They what do? They trade him to frickin' Oakland to get Mark McGwire.
Oh.
He's involved in that trade. So it's those journeyman guys. You think that everyone thinks that they're going to make it. They'll get him the next team. He's going to be on the next team. There's Ryan Ludwig. I remember him being in lineups all the time, but he never did anything. Mm-hmm. He was always that guy. He was going to be that guy. He's going to get next level. Nothing. And you trade away. But I understand why Oakland made that trade at the time because they weren't going to sign McGwire. They weren't going to get no money. Yeah. Like there's no way they were going to sign him for the money that St. Louis did. You know what I'm saying? But, you know.
I want to bring up a couple big trades from the trade deadline of 2015.
Okay.
So, one, Cincinnati Reds trade Johnny Cueto to Kansas City for Brandon Finnegan, John Lamb, and Cody Reed.
Did anyone get fired in that trade? Did they fire? Come on.
Johnny Cueto, and I don't know if you remember, 2015 Johnny Cueto, that was a man on a mission.
That guy could have been the best pitcher in baseball at that moment. Like, who was pitching better than Johnny Cueto at that time?
Not many guys.
He was coming in and he had that. Remember those two pitches, the fastball and that hook coming out of the same motion. You didn't know what it was. He buckled guys' knees.
No, that was filthy.
He was very, 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 very nasty. And he's playing now. He's trying to kick around.
Yep.
He's trying to get around. I think he's playing for Kansas City or somebody again. I mean, sorry it didn't work out that way. But
Casey rode him to the World Series that year.
That's true too. Yeah. They ended up winning, so we got to give him the band. But now he's just kicking around. There's a few other a couple times that we're going to talk about things we should get back to hockey really quickly. And
I just have one more baseball one I really want to bring up.
Sure.
Actually, two more baseball ones.
Good.
Blue Jays trade Daniel Norris, Jairo Laborte, and Matt Boyd to Detroit for David Price.
Okay, you know what? I wish we could have kept him on because Matt Boyd's still playing in the league.
He is.
I'm not saying he's great, but he's been trying.
He hasn't been spectacular.
But he's been a prospect that we thought would be better, and I thought this year was going to be his breakout year. I think I might have mentioned it on our baseball show. Would he be a guy breaking out? Because is he 30?
Yeah, but
just over there. 30? No, he never turned out to be. And who did we else we trade with him?
Daniel Norris.
Yeah, he's never turned out to be either.
Oh, he was a guy with a lot of hype though. But then
huge. We thought maybe we shouldn't have traded him too. I thought, did we give up too much? I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I thought, did we give up too much?
Well, it was the big prospects I was worried about that time were him, and then when we traded Jeff Francis to Colorado for Tulo. But then Francis, you never heard his name again.
Never, and that was another guy. That's what I want to bring up. I'm saying to myself, I remember we traded Jet because I thought Tulo was a little bit too injured, even though he played well for us in the playoffs. He's never been anything since because his injuries.
The bat wasn't there.
No, he lost his bat speed and the injuries on him. But when we traded up Jeff Francis, because Francis was 22 at the time?
If that. Yeah.
I was scared, but that's another reason we're saying, are the prospects worth the trade? And we're going to see that over, even recently,
Austin Martin.
Oh, there you go. That's what I'm saying. But then again, I think that I wish we had Trevor Darno back.
Oh, sure.
That's one of the guys that we're going there. But if you go look over before we end this, look over in the hockey end of the thing. I'm sure you've got a few there that you want to bring up, don't you?
Absolutely.
Okay, then go ahead. Let's get started.
Actually, there's one more baseball one. I forgot to get to. 2019. Nationals trade Max Scherzer and Trey Turner to the Dodgers for Josiah Gray and Keibert Ruiz.
Fired again. Someone should have been fired. Is that money, though? Because one thing we haven't brought up is sometimes this has to do with, like the McGuire one there, and when we're talking about trade deadline, sometimes it has to do with salary caps. Not in baseball, but in the hockey world, some of the time of these things, like they come up there, is maybe that a deal for money that they couldn't afford him? Nah, they could afford it, Scherzer. Come on, Scherzer. They could afford him. That's just a horrible trade.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely horrible. And where were those guys? Are we ever going to see those guys?
Probably not.
Oh, boo.
Now we can move on to hockey, I guess?
Yes, please do.
1999, Calgary trades Theo Fleury and Chris Dingman to Colorado for Rene Corbert, Wade Belak, and Robin Regier.
Interesting trade. I think Calgary won in that, didn't they?
Regier was like a fixture of their blue line for the next 10 plus years. So
but then you know what? I really I don't want to. I don't want to. One of the things I've said in this show, and I'm going to steadfast by, is I'm not very empathetic about some things that happen in sports. So I think
I know who you're getting at.
Okay, so maybe is that the reason why Calgary shipped Fleury out of town?
Well,
Because he still had some tread on the tire.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And he did play hard. But is that one of those reasons that we didn't know that wasn't coming up then? Oh, it was on the inside. People knew on the inside, but we didn't know what the issues were at the time. So is that a reason why he got sent down the road?
100%.
You know what I mean?
100%.
And that's too bad. We didn't know any of this.
And I mean, his numbers in Colorado, he was lighting it up. In
1 year, he lit it up.
For not even a quarter of the season, but for the 15 games he played in Colorado in the regular season, 24 points.
Yeah, but he was a Tasmanian devil.
18, and then the 18 playoff games, he had 17 points. So.
Oh, yeah, and he played well. And I think he had a vial in the room every game before every thing. I shouldn't say that, but
you think Joe Sakic was looking over his shoulder?
Oh, 100%. But one of the reasons that he went there is because they thought Joe Sakic could freaking put a governor on him because they've known each other from their junior days.
Sure.
Didn't they play on the same team? Or a little before that? No, Joe Sakic was on the bus crash, though. He was on that bad bus crash, wasn't he?
Really?
I think he was on that bad bus. Remember then in juniors, a couple guys got killed way before Humboldt. There was a junior hockey accident, and a couple guys got killed. I think Sakic was on that bus. But
no, they played for different junior teams. Sakic played for Swift Current. Fleury played for Moose Jaw.
Oh, but both are in Saskatchewan. I know there's a Saskatchewan connection.
Yeah, maybe
on
that's
there.
it then.
I knew there was something, maybe even minor league hockey, but I knew
Yeah.
that Sakic had something to do with Fleury. Yeah, Swift Current and Medicine Hat. Yeah, they're both in Saskatchewan. So
Fleury's from Saskatchewan. I didn't know
yeah,
that.
he's from there. I don't think Sakic's from Saskatchewan.
No, he's from Burnaby, BC.
Yeah, but he went out and played there. But in any event, I think that was a crazy-ass trade, that they should never have done that. But I'm going, well, where are those prospects? Where did they go?
Well, I mean, Regier ended up, he's the only guy
Oh,
he was
solid, yeah, I will admit. But I mean, like, I'm going back to, I want to see a couple of Montreal ones where we screwed up dramatically. You know? Yeah, like, for example, we traded.
Oh, God, I can bring up a Leaf one off the top of my head.
Okay, so
I
here's.
don't even need to see the numbers.
Okay, so this was in 2020, and he was past his best before date. When did Michael Pekka come into the league?
Mid-90s, maybe?
Mid-90s, yeah. So we had a thing on him, and we let him go.
Montreal
Drafted him.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure. How did we let him go? He was one that they stole, okay? That we shouldn't have let go. What other great Montreal? Because we had terrible management. Did you know that? Better be careful.
You guys still do.
Maybe. I'm nervous. I'm trying to get back in time a bit here, because I know, like, even though it was off season, we made some like hellacious trade. When did we trade Chelios in the off season? He didn't want to stay.
Montreal never had Pekka. The Vancouver actually had him in trade.
Oh yeah, but he went to Buffalo, right?
Yeah,
And
so
then
he was
Buffalo-
traded, here it is, from Vancouver with Mike Wilson and a round one pick. Okay, so Buffalo got McGillney out of it, though.
Oh right, that was the deal.
Vancouver got McGillney out of it. Excuse me.
And you know, he never had the years that he had. You know, because McGillney was another head case. Is he another guy that they're trying to get in the Hall of Fame?
They're trying to. I think he should be in there.
Really?
Yeah.
250 goal seasons he had?
Yeah. He scored 76 one year, though.
Oh, he was amazing. He was Burry's buddy. That's why they tried to get him over there, and it was too late. You know that? How many years did he score 50 goals?
McGillney? Let me look that up quickly.
I don't think that he gets skating. You know what? He was a Russian. Can I just say that? You know,
he had 250 goal seasons. He scored 40.
I was just going to say
scored.
he scored 40 in his day, but he never played defense.
He's a winner.
He was a cherry picker. So I don't know. All cherry pickers go to the Hall of Fame. Should have done more. Did he win a Stanley Cup? No. What's he doing now? He's drinking in Russia.
Yeah, he did.
What?
New Jersey, 2000.
Oh, right. But he was, what was he on that team? Was he a significant player? Yeah, I think he scored 30-some goals that year, didn't he?
Well, he actually,
he had a good year.
Funny enough, he was a deadline guy.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, but did he get some? I think he did okay. But that was his.
His numbers weren't great that first season in New Jersey, but the next year he played really well for them. But they lost in the finals to Colorado.
But what did he score? 40 goals that year, 30-some.
43.
Right? Yeah, 43. I do remember that because he had a comeback. I think he quit drinking or something.
Yeah. So he was traded from Vancouver to New Jersey for Brendan Morrison and Dennis Peterson. And Brendan Morrison ended up being a pretty good piece for Vancouver, was the center for that West Coast Express line with Bertuzzi and Naslund.
Right. Yeah, that was pretty good.
Not bad for both teams.
Okay, that's true. I forgot about McGillney because, you know, the thing about that guy was that some days, the 76 goal season, were you old enough to remember that? No.
It was the year I was born.
Okay, there you go. So you don't remember that. The guy could fly. Okay? What was his plus minus? Can you look that up for me just to see? 76 goals. If he's not plus minus 30, he's a bum. Okay? And I don't think that he was. He had to be. You know what I mean? What was his plus minus?
Plus 7.
Oh, the end of story. That's what I'm saying.
He was only a minus player like twice in his career, though.
But wait a second here. You're going to tell me this? You're killing me.
Okay, he was also playing with the very mediocre Buffalo squad.
I don't give a shit. You scored 76 goals and you're plus 7?
Who were his line mates?
Oh, Danny Gare? Maybe, I don't know. Danny Gare was his line mate.
Okay, Pat LaFontaine was on that team. Dale Harachuk was on that team. Bob Sweeney. Dave Andrechuk was traded to the Leafs midway that year.
Yeah.
Brad May. It was not a good. This Buffalo team
doesn't matter.
Good. No, it doesn't matter.
Yes, no.
Who's the best defenseman on that team? Doug Bodger.
Oh, yeah, he was okay. But no, wait a second here, okay? If you score 76 goals and you can't give me a plus...
Okay, but hockey's a team game.
I don't give a damn. That means...
Then you don't
how many power play goals? How many power play goals? 40?
It doesn't have power play goals.
Yeah, because he scored 40 power play goals or some shit. Come on, man. 76
So you're
goals.
going to hold that against him?
I was never a fan of the guys. Never. You know what I mean? That's when the Russians were coming in and thinking they could get whatever they want and score really good and sit back and just get French girls and drink vodka. Come on. Bury was the difference.
This
but
is sounding very, very personal.
Not personal. It's just maybe I got to be curb the way I do so that the house that happens has no, what do you call it, xenophobic,
He had 27 power play goals that year.
Oh, okay. So he scored 50 goals. About 50 goals on an even strength. Okay. I wonder how many of those
11 game winners as well.
Oh, that's pretty good because he's the only one
he led the league in game-winning goals that year.
Wow. Okay. And what was Buffalo's record that year?
They made the playoffs. I know that because they upset Boston. They were a 4 seed, though, so they weren't that good.
Did they win a round and then?
Yeah, they upset Boston in the first round. That's the famous Mayday one.
Oh, yeah,
from that season.
Oh, that's great because I'm glad Boston lost because Boston was supposed to kill them.
Buffalo's record 38, 36, and 10.
And a 76 goal score.
Yeah.
So it didn't really mean it was empty. It was like Varsho home runs, right?
That's unfair to pin that on McGillney though. He showed up. He did his job.
Okay, but you know what, though? I don't care. Like, we're getting a little off this thing, and I'm glad that we do get up that thing. I just want to bring up the fact that if you score 76 goals, you should be at least a plus 10.
Yeah, again, that depends on your teammates.
Isn't this the generations have changed people? Look at the difference.
Plus minus is a team stat.
We're going to argue about this for the rest of our career.
And especially,
and
if you are going to pin it on
quality starts.
If you are going to pin it on a player, I would say plus minus means a lot more for a defenseman than it does.
Oh,
for
I agree. I'm still saying, but you got to come back check sometimes. What do you do? I hung around center ice.
Yeah, your line mate's got to work
having
too,
a
though.
Smoke? Come on, that was horrible. Okay, you can't score 76 goals and be plus 7.
It was a bad team, though.
I don't give it.
Let's move on.
Okay, continue on.
So,
let's go.
2003.
Yes.
March 5th was the day.
Okay, I'm getting scared. This is coming. Oh, gee.
This was a big trade deadline for the Leafs. They got Doug Gilmour back. Didn't quite work out, but that's okay. We didn't trade much to get him back.
You got him back from Montreal, too.
It was from Montreal. Traded a 6th round pick, I believe.
And who was nothing? He turned out to be nothing.
Much.
Okay, but what did you think about that other? Was that a trade deadline too? Wasn't that when they?
Oh, well, let me get to this.
Okay, good.
The big deal that day, though, Toronto trades Alan McCauley, Brad Boyes, and a first-round pick in 2003. The loaded 2003 entry draft for Owen Nolan.
Whoa.
And Owen Nolan was not a bad player.
Let me put it this way.
In the final 14 games of that regular season, scored 12 points. Not bad at all, especially considering it was the height of the trap era. But come playoff time, 7 games against the Philadelphia Flyers. Grand total of 2 assists.
And what was he, -6?
It doesn't have the playoff mind. I don't even want to see it. It's okay.
Was that? You know what, though? I thought, who did they trade? Alan McCauley was one, right?
Yeah.
Oh, he didn't turn out.
But he was coming off was a very good playoff run the previous season.
I thought that was the guy who was the other 2 guys? But the guy, Alan
Brad Boyes, who ended up being
more in Detroit.
He scored a 40 goal. So he had a 40 goal season. I believe he had
with Detroit though, right?
St. Louis.
He did have. Oh yeah, he had 40
so
goals.
he was all rookie in 06 with Boston.
Yeah. Okay, remember.
And then he had a 40 goal season with St. Louis, which hurt so much.
Oh, yeah, but I thought Alan McCauley was more important piece at the time because of his two-way play.
He flamed out though. That was the thing.
Who?
That was Brad
McCauley?
Boyes. Yeah.
He flamed out.
I don't think he lasted much.
3 years
after the lockout.
3 years.
Yeah.
It was a drag because he looked like a Guy Carbonneau light.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, he was a Guy Carbonneau light at the time.
Yeah,
but
he played 06 with San Jose again, and then 07, 10 games with LA. That was his career.
Okay, so that was. But you know what? When you guys got Owen Nolan, he was coming off some 40-goal seasons.
I know.
I thought this was an advantage. In hindsight, it wasn't. But at the time, I thought it wasn't a bad trade. And Owen Nolan wasn't. How old was he at the time? 30? He wasn't that old. 31, 32?
Yeah, he must have been.
It wasn't like he been long in his tooth. He was still skating. He was a big power.
He was 31.
31, yeah. You know who he was playing a lot like? Who was the other winger we had now that never did anything? And he was from Brampton. He was number 1 overall, pick 2. Played for the Battalions just recently. And he scored a bunch of goals, and then he never did nothing when he got traded to, what was his name? Oh, not Owen Nolan. Oh. As soon as we see the guy, we're going to know who it is. But he didn't do anything when he became a trade dime acclamation in it, or acquisition, and it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
What was his name now? It's going to drive me crazy. Played for Team Canada. Like an Owen Nolan played for Team Canada.
He did.
Okay.
But the big piece here that the Leafs gave up was that first rounder in 2003. The pick ended up being 21 overall. Let me read out some players that are still available at 21 overall.
Okay.
Ryan Kessler.
Oh, boo.
Mike Richards.
Oh.
Corey Perry.
Oh. All were available at 21? And who did?
Patrice Bergeron.
Oh,
Shea
my
Weber.
God. Oh, my God. And who was the 21 pick? Who did
It ended up being Mark Stewart.
So they screwed up too.
Well, San Jose traded the pick to Boston, who Boston is getting a little bit of a reputation for screwing up in loaded drafts, but that's neither here nor there.
Who was the first round pick that year?
The first overall?
Yeah.
Fleury. It probably should have been Eric Stahl, though.
Oh, yeah, it should have been.
He went number 2. Then Nathan Horton 3.
Nathan Horton was a bad number 3 pick.
His career was cut short by injuries, though.
Okay.
Yeah. Nikolai Sheradev, number 4 to Columbus. That's a full bust.
Oh, that's 100% unadulterated. What country did he come from?
Russia.
I just noticed that. Okay.
Buffalo took Thomas Vanek, number 5.
Which was a solid pick.
Yeah.
We ended up with him, but he wasn't.
Some of the better players are kind of got win the teens, like Jeff Carter, Zach Parise,
Oh, right.
Getzlaff, Brent Burns,
Oh, wow.
Brent Seabrook. Did I say Dustin Brown?
Dustin Brown was okay.
He
30 goals, 3 years.
He was a big part of that cup run. Those 2 cup runs, I should say, especially the first one.
Yeah, but I never.
He was
solid. Good second line guy.
He was
first line guy.
He was in talk for the Conn Smythe for the 2012 Cup though, because he was a point per game player that playoff run.
Oh, and he was physical, and he played some good physical hockey. I'll give him the benefit of a doubt on that. Sure, he wasn't so bad. I just think it's crazy. Like when you think about some of these trades now. When you go like, what, Owen Nolan? I forgot about that one. That was just plain dirty.
And then 2004, he missed the final 17 games of the season. Didn't play one single shift for the playoffs. And then I believe they still had him the 06 season, but again, injuries, so he didn't play that. And there was a contract thing. I believe they that went to court.
I believe so. We should look that. Yeah, I remember something vague and ugly reared its ugly head about that nonsense.
I want to talk about 06.
Okay.
The two teams that went to the finals that year, if you remember, were Carolina and Edmonton. Each of them made pretty significant.
That's year Carolina won, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Carolina that year, they got Mark Recchi from Pittsburgh for Chris Kolanos, Nicholas Nordgren, and a second-round pick who didn't amount to anything. Big win there for Carolina, obviously.
Huge.
Big loss there for Pittsburgh because they didn't get anything.
Okay, but you know what's even crazier though? Mark Recchi was a trade deadline acquisition for Pittsburgh too, wasn't he?
I believe so.
You know, who did he start with, or did he start with Pittsburgh?
I think he started with Pittsburgh, then they traded him to Philly.
No, Philly got him I think Philly got him for a trade deadline, and then he got another trade deadline, and then another trade deadline.
No, but he was traded, I believe. So he was on Pittsburgh for that first Cup run with Lemieux.
Yep.
But then midseason '92, he was traded for. Oh my God, he's a coach now.
Defenseman too.
No, forward. He was right wing. He was involved in that gambling controversy with Gretzky. Oh my God, what's his name?
Oh, I can see him. Big guy, he's bald head.
Yeah.
That's Zelik, not Peter Zezel. As soon as you say his name, I can see him. We're gonna yell when we hear his name. Not Peter Zezel.
I'm pulling it up quickly.
Oh, what's his? I want to remember it before.
He was stapled to Lemieux's line for a while.
Yeah. Oh, and big boy too. Oh, we're
Tocchet.
Yeah, we should all be shot. Rick Tocchet, of course. I knew it as soon as I could see his face.
Yeah.
You know, that was a pretty decent trade.
Yep.
You know, and I just want to get back to Mark Recchi. He's in the Hall of Fame now, right?
I believe he is.
He's one of those journeyman guys that should have been in the Hall of Fame. He was good in every team. He came to Montreal and gave us a great year.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I hope he's in the Hall of Fame, or is he? I'm pretty sure he is. He scored 500 goals, 400 at least.
He's got to have 5.
Oh yeah, he was a great two-way player. He was the Steve Shutt.
577 goals.
Yeah, so he's in the Hall of Fame.
He's in the Hall of Fame.
He's Hall of Fame, 100%. 577 goals, you're in the Hall of Fame. He was a Steve Shutt of his time, I thought.
Fair enough. Another trade here. Boston trades Sergei Samsonov. This is the same year.
Yeah.
Sergei Samsonov to Edmonton for Marty Reisner, Jan Stastny, and a 2006 second-round pick.
It turned out to be who?
Milan Lucic.
Oh, wow. How are you supposed to know that, though? That's just good. That you got lucky.
You know what, though? Edmonton, they got to the finals that year. If Rolison did not get injured game one of that finals, they probably win that cup.
Possibly.
And Carolina was, like, what, every round, I believe, they were taking out other teams' top guys.
That's nasty to say. That's something I would say.
I'm defending you because they took out Montreal round one.
Yes, I know.
I believe
that.
they took Koivu. I think they took out.
Yeah, they hacked them. They did. Yeah, there was some nefarious stuff, and Eric Stahl couldn't be stopped.
Yeah, and I believe
a giant.
The other one was conference final. I think they took out like Briere or Drury. I can't remember for Buffalo.
They took out Briere.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I remember that too. That was okay. And who was the coach?
Carolina.
Paul Maurice.
No. It's the guy. He's a coach of.
The
Rangers
other nut
now.
bar. Yeah.
He's got a French sounding name.
I know. Then the other French. I know it is.
He's American.
One of the two. I knew. I couldn't go wrong on that. And I'm surprised he still got a job. He was out of the league for a couple of years, wasn't he?
No, but he coached in Washington recently.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. Like last year, wasn't he with them?
No.
Yeah. Laviolette.
Yeah, no, he didn't.
No, he was with Washington last year.
Did he?
Yeah. I'm pretty. Let's.
Did he replace what's his name? You're right. Because when they kicked, that was after the McPhee thing and after Stanley Cup.
Yeah, he was with Laviolette. He was with Washington the last 3 years.
Yeah. Okay, as we know, he had his day. I still think that, Washington's in big trouble all the way. The one thing I want to just bring up really quickly, though, when we talk about this, is that what ends up happening is we get a whole bunch of sanctimonious justification for the stupidity of the GMs. Don't you notice that?
Sure.
When they get over it, they start saying, well, we did know this, or we didn't know that, or we weren't sure of this, or we weren't sure of that. I'm just saying it's bullshit. Either when you pull the trigger on these trades, you do right or you do wrong. Let's just say sometimes you make mistakes. As we draw to the end of this, you make mistakes.
Yep.
For example, one of the deadline moves that was made, or just before it was going on, is when Atlanta let Brett Favre go. You know what I mean? What were they thinking on that? You didn't know, but they had Chandler.
Yep.
Chandler was coming off an all-pro season. What are you going to do? You don't keep him, okay? The Montreal Expos. Why did they let Pedro Martinez go? Was it trade deadline? They could have let him go, and they said no. Then they lost him at the contract.
Yep.
So maybe what they should have done is they should have traded him at the trade deadline, right?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like stupid stuff like that. Larry Walker. Why did they trade him? They didn't. They could have let him go at the trade deadline. They didn't, and they ended up being a free agent going to Colorado. So sometimes I think what the trade deadline should be for is like if you want to relieve salary cap or protect your salary cap, that's pretty cool. Or if you want to bring in a player that you think is a prospect going to make it, like I'm still saying, like I want to end the show with this, is that I cried like crazy when Aaron Sanchez and Noah Syndergaard were going out the door at the trade deadline. I screamed like a little bitch for R.A. Dickey. Now, Dickey did his job when he was here, and he even gave us another season where we made the playoffs again.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can't justify that. Was it worth the trade for Syndergaard and leaving Aaron Sanchez leaving town? Now, I bet you if you look at the bean counters that are sitting in the room with the Toronto Blue Jays, they say we're as good a game because they got those playoff games. They got that money.
Yep.
They got the money from the TV. So, and now that Syndergaard is playing for who? Cleveland? And where is Aaron Sanchez? We say it's not even on a roster. Gone. That just lets you know that the particular thing about this show, and if you're all listening to, is it's all over the board, buddy. You don't know what you're going to get. Look at some of the trades that we talked about. Look at some of the things that were done. Some teams yes, some teams no. I'm just going to go back to the Kurt Schilling was traded 3 times at a trade deadline. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Mm-hmm. 21-year-old Jeff Bagwell got traded, and how did that work out, fans? Oh, well, here's where we're going to go. David Cohn went 2 or 3 places. How it worked out. Good sometimes, not so good some other times. So I think the moral of the story is this. You can never overprice prospects. They're never as worth as what you think they are. I think prospects are a lot like your lottery tickets.
Yep.
Don't you think so?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I do? Let's take your lottery tickets. Today, I think I'm a millionaire. Tomorrow, That's
Tomorrow they're
another
trash.
In any event, anybody that's listening to this shows, because we're going to come back with another show later on, and it's going to be called Booms and Busts. I think you should put that Lucic one in your back pocket, because I did not realize he got stolen in the second round like that. But what we're going to talk about is that the reason why we watch sports is because of the unpredictability of the situation, and add on to the fact that we never know what a prospect's going to be, or why Theron Fleury got traded to Colorado at that time. You know what I mean?
Well, I can tell you why he was traded to Colorado at that time.
Okay, we know that, but I'm saying, like, when you're as a sports fan and you're above the table, we don't see that what goes on behind the curtains.
No.
You know what I mean? And what goes on behind the curtains always ends up affecting teams in the long run, and perhaps maybe in the short term it's going to do it good. For example, I'm going to end on this. Jack Morris came to Toronto the first year. That was a good move. The second year, Jack couldn't even throw the ball.
He was not even close to making that playoff roster.
No. It couldn't be done. And that's what happens when you make trades at the trade deadline, or you're looking at giving up prospects for people that are going to get you there. The question is, and it's not going to be answered today, is the chip worth everything? I think in the moment it is. But, I mean, if it's going to cost you 10 years of being irrelevant, I go,
That's the problem.
The players that get that chip will tell you one thing. The guy that's moving people to their seats, that's an usher every night, might tell you a different story. You know what I'm saying? And on that note, once again, we're going to say this was pre-recorded on Simcoe Day 2023, August 6th, I believe, or August 7th, I believe.
August 7th.
Is there anything you'd like to say before we go out the door?
That's just about it.
And as I go out the door, I'm just hoping that the Toronto Blue Jays trade prospects at this deadline backdoors us into the playoffs.
There we go.
And on that note, hi, my name is Cruz.
And I'm Andrew Milani.
This is The House That Happens, and we never forget to keep the vibe alive.
You can find The House That Happens on Podbean, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart Radio, Player FM, Samsung, Podchaser, Boomplay, YouTube, and SoundCloud. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at The House That Happens, and follow us on Twitter at House Happens. You can also shoot us an email at thehousethathappens@gmail.com.